No, no. I'm getting really irritated by the lack of consistency from the FIA now. Last week, we had Kevin Magnussen defending for dear life against all the other backmarkers to ensure that Nico Hulkenberg could finish P10 at Saudi Arabia, using some fairly strong-handed, strong-fisted driving that we've come to expect from Kevin. But this week, Fernando Alonso gets a 20-second penalty because he decided to brake 100 metres earlier, and George Russell, as a consequence, ended up crashing. Now, of course, there was, the dirty air effect where, because George Russell lost a fair bit of downforce by getting too close to Alonso, he overcorrected and crashed his car. But that was in reaction to what Alonso did. Alonso ultimately is not responsible for Russell crashing. And I can tell you, there's at least 5 or 6 drivers who could have been in Russell's car, who probably would have avoided a crash. I don't understand the FIA anymore. I know there's been plenty of decisions over the past 5 years that have been extremely questionable. Vettel losing the race win at Canada because he cut the grass and came out in front of Hamilton and slowed him down and getting a 5-second penalty, which lost him the race. The 2021 Abu Dhabi scandal, where Michael Massey suddenly decided all the lap cars in between Hamilton and Verstappen were allowed to overtake the race leader and get back onto the lead lap for the very final lap, so that they could go green flag racing for one more lap. That was just bonkers. Oh my god. I mean, there's so many incidents. I mean, the 2003 European Grand Prix where Alonso actually did brake test Coulthard at the Nürburgring at the final chicane before, of course, getting back onto the start-finish straight, where Coulthard went to the left-hand side to take the inside, and Alonso then took the inside line, having slowed down arguably at least 200 metres earlier than he should have done, but because, of course, he was struggling with brake issues, he had to try to slow the car down so that he wouldn't overshoot the corner and end up losing 5th place to Coulthard. But of course, despite the fact they ended up spinning off in an attempt to avoid Alonso's car and ended up being forced to retire from the race, Alonso actually got no penalty for that crash. I know this is 21 years ago, but I do remember it because I actually did believe at the time that Alonso should have got a penalty, but now I'm actually defending Alonso on the grounds that in 2024 Australia that he should not get a penalty, because the FIA cannot make their minds up. They can't make their minds up. Where is the consistency? I want consistency. It's really frustrating to watch a sport where the governing body cannot make their minds up when a big incident like this happens. 2006 Italian Grand Prix qualifying is another one. You know, Alonso gets a 5-place grid drop because apparently he was alleged to be holding up Felipe Massa, who was on a flying qualifying lap, whilst Alonso was on an out lap to try and start his qualifying lap. But yet, despite the fact there's no evidence from the onboard footage that Alonso actually held Massa up at all during his out lap, Alonso gets a penalty. There's no consistency. I'm talking mostly about incidents that have been involved Fernando Alonso, by the way. I'm not talking about any other driver. And then, of course, last year, Alonso was apparently alleged to have been holding up Hamilton during the race at last year's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But as we all know, of course, despite having a few moments where he braked a few 100 metres earlier, he got no penalty. But yet, because of a consequence of Russell crashing out, Alonso gets a penalty. It's like, does the FIA really know what they're doing? I don't think they do. I really don't. And I think it could well be a consequence of the 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix where Michael Schumacher squeezed Rubens Barrichello into the concrete wall belonging to the pit lane. Rubens Barrichello, despite successfully overtaking Michael Schumacher down the inside of turn 1, then screamed on the radio about how it wasn't fair and how it wasn't very nice and how Schumacher was an absolute arsehole for doing it. And then post-race, Derek Morrick and Damon Hill agreed with Rubens Barrichello, saying that if that had happened earlier on in the race, he would have given Michael Schumacher a penalty, which I'm sorry, that's just silly, because as much as, even though, yes, Michael Schumacher really did push the limits with his defensive maneuver, he didn't actually do anything wrong. And whilst I will have to take a bit of blame myself, because of course being something of a massive Michael Schumacher hater back in the day on my own front, I myself agreed with everyone who said that Michael Schumacher should have been punished. But the only reason why I agreed that Schumacher should be punished is for the reputation he had as an F1 driver, not because he actually did anything wrong in that 2010 Hungarian defensive maneuver against Rubens Barrichello. And I will apologise to Schumacher fans for it. It was ridiculous. And now we have a culture where the FIA will give out arbitrary penalties whenever they feel like it. It's so wrong, man. I've had enough, because if I was in charge of Formula One, I would follow the rules to the letter of the law, and I would clearly specify that if you scrub off more than 50 kilometers of your braking of the speed you carry into a braking zone compared to what you would usually do on any other racing lap under green flag conditions, you would get a penalty, because of course in this case Alonso scrubbed off 30 kilometers of his braking speed. Is that enough to necessarily cause an accident? Well, in a lot of cases no, but it's a lack of transparency that is so frustrating, and I've had enough. And to be honest, I think, as for the actual race review, I'm going to do it tomorrow because I had to get this one out of the way first.